What's up everyone, OpSoldier here, and today we're going to talk about adaptation in fighting games. So when I first saw the Street Fighter 6 trailer, I was surprised, to say at the least. Street Fighter has always been a game that's been much more difficult to play compared to games like Mortal Kombat. I remember when I first learned my first DP, it felt like a rite of passage in the Street Fighter games, right? So when I saw the modern one, I was a little bit concerned with the modern controls, but then it got me thinking, good players are always going to be good at fighting games. They're always going to be able to adapt. They're always going to be able to beat the opposing player, no matter how easy the controls are, right? This goes also with things like zoning and grappling, right? A lot of newer players tend to not like those playstyles because they kind of force you into your opponent's game naturally. Same thing with teleports, like certain teleports. People generally won't like because teleports are really oppressive in a lot of situations. You can't... Spoonman said it the best, one of my friends, Spoon. He said, you can't really extend as much when someone has a teleport because if you extend too much, they can teleport and punish you for it. And that got me thinking, you know, the more and more I talk with players who really want to focus on improving, the more and more I kind of realize that sticking to one particular form of playstyle or sticking to one particular thing that you are good at all the time really can hinder you as a fighting game player. It can actually put you in a situation where you're left in the dust, justified or not justified. Let's say I learned zoning. I've been zoning my entire life, right? Like that's all I do in fighting games is I zone. Well, the problem is, if something like zoning gets toned down in the future, whether that be a good thing or a bad thing, I am going to be out of a playstyle, right? I'm not going to be able to adapt to the next fighting game that comes out that might change, right? So for example, if Dragon Punches become one button, then me being able to do a Dragon Punch fast will be easier for the higher level player. But if the other player, the casual player, can anti-air more consistently, that will force the more high level player to not be able to jump as often, right? So basically, long story short, high level players will always be able to adapt. If they've been playing a strong grounded game, that's not going to be an issue to them, right? Because they never jump anyways. So one button DP is not going to bother them as much because they don't jump anyways, right? They don't overextend anyways, you know, so if it had some sort of invincibility, they would be able to bait it out. Now again, I'm not saying that fighting games should become easier or fighting games should remove certain aspects of things. If it were up to me, in a lot of situations, I would say we should have more options and not less options, right? So concepts like zoning, concepts like grappling, concepts like, you know, DPs being more difficult or like more powerful moves being more difficult, that to me makes more sense. I've always said that the developers should have the final say on what they want to do with their fighting game, and it seems like the developers are adding these new mechanics to ease newer players into fighting games. And one of my big goals as a fighting game player is to get more players into the fighting game scene. And the developers probably know more than me. If we're going in a different route, being able to adapt to those things is what's actually going to make you a really strong player. This is really consistent in a lot of situations with a lot of players. Players like Sonic Fox in the NRS scene have adapted to 3 completely different Mortal Kombat games, and other players from other scenes have done the same with games like Street Fighter. Like Diago has been doing well consistently in a lot of Street Fighter games despite some of the changes, even if they're minor in Street Fighter, right? Being able to adapt is really important, and it'll make you a better player in the long run. So basically, long story short, after kind of having a long conversation with a friend, I realized that like the most important thing that I should be doing when I play fighting games is focusing on getting better in a lot of fundamental ways. So whether that be becoming a good zoner, but maybe getting good at something else like grappling, or getting good at something else like pressure or footsies or whatever, being able to adapt to the next game that comes out and always being able to be at the top or be at the best level that I can be, because I don't ascribe to one particular playstyle. Maybe I prefer one playstyle, but that doesn't stop me from being good at other playstyles in fighting games, thus allowing me to play pretty much any fighting game that will ever come out, no matter if the controls change or the styles get removed because this is the new generation of fighting games. So honestly, when it comes down to it, being able to adapt is the most important thing, and this is something that I've heard from a lot of high-level players like Ramola, Sonic Fox, because the number one thing that fighting games teach us in and outside the game is adaptation. Anyway, that's all I have for you guys today. Have fun playing fighting games, and have a good fight.